Doctors in England have voted to go on strike with...
Are doctors being reckless by striking, yes?
Resident doctors have today voted to go ahead with strike action.
Doctors wouldn't be out on strike if they didn't have to.
I know I'm not wearing scrubs or trying to sell you a supplement, but I promise you, I'm a doctor in the UK. And being a doctor in the UK has somehow become political recently. And the reason for that is because a lot of us have decided to do something that right-wing capitalists hate, and that's go on strike. Ooh. Now, the idea of doctors going on strike is kind of strange, because you must be asking yourself, why would these people who've dedicated their lives to learning about the human body, just enough fit to help the human body, actually decide to put down their stethoscopes and not help anyone? Well, it's because we're greedy and we want more money and we don't care about the country as a whole. Well, no. That's what the newspapers would want you to think. That's what the television news would want you to think. That's what a lot of people in power would want you to think. But I want to give you the real life perspective from someone who's been a doctor for 2 years and has now been going through this process, and how actually this whole strike probably affects us and you guys more than those people who are trying to tell you the wrong story. Okay, so let me explain this. I don't want to be using numbers. I don't want to be talking about percentages of pay. I just want to give you the real life side of this story. Take, for example, you're a 16-year-old. You are doing relatively well in your class. You think you can mostly get A stars and A's. So because of that, you think you want to apply to med school. And you know it's a long journey. You know it's difficult. But for whatever reason, you know you want to be a doctor. So you decide to pick the right GCSEs, you pick the right A-levels, you do the work experience, you get the personal statement, you do the interview practice, you do the interview, you apply to the universities, you get rejected by a lot, and finally you get an offer. You beat 11 other people for your one space and somehow you get an offer. You're proud of yourself. You're like, I've done something good, something that I can be proud of. And then you go through med school, everything's fine, and then you come out into the world and you start working in medicine. And it's not necessarily what you expected it to be, but you never thought it was going to be easy, so you accept it. But the thing about being a doctor that I think a lot of people don't realize is we used to be told when we were 16 that we'd be guaranteed to have a job for life. But what would you say if I told you that that is no longer the case? So look, after med school, you get 2 years of foundation, guaranteed employment. That hasn't changed as far as I know. But then it used to be that after those 2 years, you apply for specialty training, and then you apply for your next level of specialty training, and then you become a consultant. That's broadly how it works. But now, what's happening is that journey is no longer guaranteed, because you have to constantly be doing portfolio stuff, career stuff, more and more exams, more and more education. So that road that started when you're 16 isn't going to end until you're 40. And that's fine. That's how it's meant to be. That's how the system has been designed. But now we're at a point where at each of those points where you apply to do the next level of your career, there are now too many doctors applying for the number of places available. So it means now if you're someone who walks into medicine thinking, you know what, even if I don't get my specialty of my dream, at least there's something else that I can do. Now the reality is, actually, not only will you not get the specialty of your dream, but you're going to have to do shift work like working at Amazon or working at Uber. Now look, I have nothing against these jobs. These jobs are crucial to the economy. These jobs are how some people pay the bills, and there's nothing wrong with the job that these people do. I've worked in warehouses, I've worked in Asda, worked in Best Connection, I know what it's like. But how have we created a system where now we have people who are trained by the taxpayer, who pay their own student loans, who come out with £100,000 of student loans, which was subsidized by you and me? How have we made this system when now these people are in jobs where they're way too overqualified? It's a waste of money and it's a waste of resources. But why has it happened? Well, it's because of underplanning, underinvestment, and just pure illogical actions. The government a few years ago made more med school places, made it so that there were more people in med school, which meant that there were going to be more doctors, but they didn't make any more jobs for later down the line. So now there's this massive bottleneck going through. So that isn't on the surface what we're striking about, what the BMA is striking about. We're striking about pay. But this situation means that although our pay is less than it could be, we don't even have the guaranteed job anymore that makes that lower pay still not that bad. Now, not only do we get paid less than we should, but also we actually have a situation where we spend all this money and time and effort going into a field that might not have any jobs. And look, it's not because of AI, it's not because of technology improvement, it's not because the world needs less doctors. There is still a shortage of doctors. Like, there's a global shortage of doctors, that the whole world needs more doctors more generally, but it's actually so much worse in the UK. Now, let me give you an example. You've probably heard about this whole thing about, we need to pay doctors more because they can go to Australia for better money and better conditions. And that's true. But let me tell you this. In Australia, not only do you get paid better and you get treated better and work less for more money, but also this is completely anecdotal. This is not based on facts. This is not based on any figures. This is just my own experience. But I sent off 5 applications to Australia looking for jobs. And in those 5 applications, I got 4 interviews. Didn't do any of them. Basically, they were begging me to come because they wanted me there. But in the UK, I sent off 20 applications. 20 applications around London, southeast London, that kind of area, because that's where my family and support network are. And I got a grand total of 1 interview and 1 job, which I'm so grateful I got. But that means that right now it took me 20 attempts of getting a job before someone would even speak to me face to face to actually employ me. And that's the situation that we're in. And I hope I'm not any worse than the other doctors. This actual situation is replicated across every doctor I know, and it's a national problem. In fact, a lot of my friends now can't even get jobs full stop, and they're going to have to do kind of self-employed ad hoc work where they fill in the rota and just hope for the best that they can make enough money at the end of the month. And if not, then the old Uber or the old Amazon would happily take them. But what do you think this is going to do? This is going to essentially make a situation where not only will Australia treat doctors better, will it help us make more money, but it literally is the only place where we can now get jobs. So I don't know how we've built this system, but I think we really need to be careful because we are really almost encouraging doctors to leave the country. And so when you're wondering, why are people striking? Why are doctors striking? This is not the full reason. Yes, our pay has gone down by 30% since 2008. The doctor out of med school gets paid £17 an hour, which is outrageous. Our student loans are £100,000, and that is also crazy. But all those things are genuine things, and we want to be paid more and treated better for the work that we do. But at the same time, if you have all of this stuff going on as well, obviously you're going to have this crazy situation where 90% of all the people who voted to strike said yes. So look, I don't know what's going to happen as a result of this, but you really have a situation now where doctors are unemployed, they're being forced out the country, and they feel underappreciated. And I feel this time the media and the people are less on doctors' side, and I get it because everyone is struggling and it's a tough time, cost of living, and I don't have any solutions. But all I'm trying to say is this is the problem from someone who's going through this myself and who sees my friends who are the most smart, incredible, ambitious people now essentially be unable to find a job in a career they chose just to help people. So if you don't want doctors to strike, if you don't want us to feel underappreciated, if you don't want this perpetual thing to go on over and over again, and you actually want to think, why is such a vast majority of people agreeing on this one thing of wanting to strike, then I would try to, send a letter to your MP, whatever happens with political change, but at least try to understand where it's coming from. The sad thing is, if someone asked me at 16, who maybe came from a family where they didn't have any money and they're just trying to do well for themselves and they're really bright, should I do medicine? I'd honestly probably say no, because you have an opportunity to take your family and yourself to a better situation. So if you've got that, you should do what our society rewards. And sadly, that's stuff like banking and finance. It's sad, and there's more things to life than money. But when we live in this world that means that money is the only thing that helps people get things like housing or things that are just basic to the human experience, then we have to essentially encourage people to pursue it as a number one, because otherwise they'll be stuck in this generational cycle of poverty. You don't have to be a left-wing degenerate like me to empathize with doctors who want to strike. Ultimately, regardless of what your thoughts are on pay or striking in general, right now we're in a really untenable situation where so many people in our medical field are not happy and they want to leave or they want to not work for days on end. And that to me is insane. I remember 5 years ago when I was still at med school and these strikes were kind of bubbling up, people were kind of having words about pay and all that stuff. And actually, me and my friends used to say, there's no way doctors are going to strike because they're so stoic and they don't tend to want to complain. That's the thing, although doctors now have this reputation of not wanting to work and wanting to strike, by disposition, we're very much like, no, if I'm ill, I'm going to work. I'm never missing a day of work. I'm never letting people down. That's just how we are. Before these strikes, you can see that not only did doctors' pay go down loads, but it went down more than other jobs, even nurses. And that's because doctors before these strikes were one of the jobs that were the least likely to strike. And that's why now there's been this massive shift, because people have realized we've been stoic for years and it's just made it so our conditions are getting worse and worse and worse. And that's something that we can't essentially allow happen. So that's basically it. You probably live in a country, or you know of a country where doctors are unemployed with full medical degrees and their whole country is forcing them to go to Australia. I don't know what to do about it, but all I ask is that you can understand why today and for the next few days, doctors aren't going to work, because they're not happy, man. They're not happy. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm sure they'll come to a deal. But if not, hey, a strike is a strike. So for a couple days, I guess we'll drop our stethoscopes and pick up our signs with our media-friendly slogans. But hey, I'll see you guys on the picket line. Peace.